Orange Bowl, where Howard Schnellenberger and the Miami Hurricanes upset the number one ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers. Miami wins the national championship there, and Howard Schnellenberger wins it all down in South Beach, South Florida. Nick Taylor, what's going on with you?
Man, nothing much. Just been a crazy whirlwind weekend for the Sports Times Network, and boy, I think we got something for them today, Dan.
Oh yeah, yesterday we interviewed Howard Schnellenberger, as everybody knows. He didn't really want to talk about the comparing the Miami and Florida jobs, or even who should be the head football coach at the U to take on that football coaching job again. But it boils down to, we have learned today that the reason is, and the reason why he told us, quote, the job will be filled next week, unquote. The reason is Howard Schnellenberger will be introduced next week. It will be a signed, sealed, and delivered deal that Howard Schnellenberger will return as the head football coach on an interim basis to the Miami Hurricanes. So let's get right to it. He talked a little bit about the FAU position going into the future. I believe you asked him, Nick, and he didn't really want to touch base on it, but he did say the FAU job is bright in the future. But he's obviously disappointed that you see a TCU move to the Big East. You see all these other schools contemplating super conferences in the off season. He told me back in May in his office that he wanted FAU to approach the Big East. It didn't happen. They didn't even strike any type deals. So I think it leads to him returning to the U on an interim basis, because he obviously wants to win down there, and he's obviously disappointed he left pretty early in his tenure down there to go to the USFL. But this is what we have right here. Sources close to the Miami Athletic Director's office states that Miami AD Kirby Hocutt has formally offered Schnellenberger the head coaching job on an interim basis until, quote, a big name candidate, unquote, comes out. So that could be 2 to 3 years, whatnot, down the road. But I think we're looking at, from what I've heard, Schnellenberger will be there no more than 2 years till they get their guys. So obviously they have a list in the future. Quote from Hocutt, this would be purely a stopgap measure until a more desirable candidate becomes available. That's coming from the source, I might add. During recent conversations we have learned between Kirby, Hocutt, and Schnellenberger, the two have agreed on that Howard Schnellenberger would take over the Hurricane football program for up to 2 years. So this makes it a very capable situation for their program in the future. We have one source, we'll go by his name as well. He's saying Howard was reached his office last evening, at FAU in his office in Boca, and Schnellenberger actually confirmed that he had spoken with Kirby Hocutt, the Miami AD. Quote from him, I believe this is Howard Schnellenberger right here. We have reached an agreement in principle where I would take over for 1 to 2 years and then resign when Kirby locates the coach he wants, unquote. Plus he added, quote, I expect the final details to be hammered out this weekend and the contract to be signed early next week. I am very excited about the prospect of returning to the University of Miami, as is my wife. We loved the area when we lived there before. Who knows, maybe I can lead them to another national championship again, unquote. And also that same source goes on from somebody close to the Board of Trustees down there at the University of Miami, quote, he has several good years left. We see this as a win-win, as he has been unhappy at FAU for some time and has been looking for a suitable exit ramp. The University of Miami is that exit ramp, unquote. We have also heard that a colleague in our business, Wally Gomez, in South Florida, he's learned some of the same deals that's been going on the last 24 hours. But Nick Taylor, welcome back. I guess that explains why he really did not want want to talk about this situation yesterday in the interview. Explain to me, Nick, why about the FAU situation, why he started becoming unhappy.
Well, I mean, I think it's like you touched on just a minute ago. I mean, you see teams like the TCUs of the world, getting in BCS conferences. Meanwhile, Florida Atlantic, a Florida school with plenty of athletes, stays in the Sun Belt, really does not seem to make a lot of football progress despite Coach Schnellenberger's efforts. And it's like I told you on Wednesday, to be honest, it's, back in May, he was dead set on FAU being a BCS conference team. And when I asked him about that in the open interview before he even got to the Miami situation, he said, well, first of all, we got to keep our team on the straight and narrow. And, that tells me that his focus completely went away from, Florida Atlantic being a BCS conference and having those goals that he had as early as this summer to now, obviously, we now have learned that his focus is elsewhere. We're not Coach Schnellenberger, by the way, but we have an obligation to report the news and tell it like it is as we see it. And the bottom line is, we put Coach Schnellenberger in an awkward position, unintentionally, obviously, because we had no more.
Well, I mean, yeah, you bring up a great point. I mean, we interviewed him yesterday right before he left. Apparently, he even told us he was about to leave the office and go home for the day, probably the weekend as well, before he gets into some recruiting stuff.
But actually interviewed him after Gomez.
Well, yeah.
At least the time accounts.
Right, you just interrupted me. That's what I was stating. We had called him, interviewed him, then all of a sudden we find out a few hours later, Gomez or whoever Gomez knows or whatnot talked to him about returning to Miami. That's why he was uncomfortable, point blank. So he is going to Miami next week, and I think it's a great situation because, hey, you have a stopgap, like he quoted. You can get rid of him at any time, and he knows his position. He's okay with it. He gets to return home, and they get a chance at Rich Rodriguez, Urban Meyer, maybe a Tommy Tuberville, whoever the next hot coach is out there, or even maybe a Steve Spurrier wanting to say, hey, I want to go to Miami for a year or something. They're going to get that type of big bang Nick Saban type coach to Alabama and quickly win right off the way. I think it's a great situation.
I definitely do also, and I guess while we're on here, we'll throw in that Gus Malzahn's expected to become the Vanderbilt coach early next week, and if he doesn't take the job, Maryland offensive coordinator James Franklin, who was the minority interview for the job, or at least one of the main minority interview, he has agreed to take the position if Malzahn turns it down. So
yeah, that's right. Gus Malzahn has been offered 2.6 plus incentives by Vanderbilt University to become their next head football coach. He actually has interviewed twice already. I believe Wednesday night was his second interview at Vanderbilt. So he's obviously intrigued. He's been offered. So, the ball's in his court. Will he leave and take it and not even coach the bowl game? That'd be something to look at. Remember, David Cutcliffe was in the same situation going into the national championship 1998 Fiesta Bowl with Tennessee versus Florida State. He takes that Ole Miss job. Randy Sanders moves up. He gets it done against Florida State. So we'll see if Auburn can handle that. It's a more complex.
if I'm wrong, I believe mine actually left Florida before the Florida-Oklahoma game a couple of years ago also.
I believe he coached that game, but what's interesting, when Pittsburgh played Utah that year, Mullen actually stayed on there, and didn't Urban coach that game?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so Urban and Mullen both stayed for that Fiesta Bowl.
Correct. And as far as we know, Dan, is it not correct to say that Petrino and Peterson seem to be the two guys that Florida's talking with at least the most at the moment?
They're talking to Peterson, but today Bobby Petrino signed a 7-year deal with the University of Arkansas.
Okay, so it looks like it may be Chris Peterson at Florida, but another candidate could always emerge.
Yeah, look at him and Charlie Strong, but I mean, hey, they're biting nails in Gainesville, especially, I just think this Miami situation's a whole lot better in Florida, plus it's an easier football conference. It's a great job at Miami. You can win won 5 straight, which is very, very true. It's great football, the best football in the nation, but they beat up on each other, and sometimes it's just a fluke,